Hello, my name's Ron Stefanik, and I started sewing in 2013, unemployed, bored, and looking for a new hobby.
My name is Robert Tucker. I live in Southern California in the desert. I started quilting in 2011.
Hi, my name is Rich Danner, and I've been quilting since 2006. My primary influences are that I come from a Pennsylvania German family, and I literally live a stone's throw from Lancaster County.
My name is Jim Vandernoot. I took my beginning quilting class in 1989, 30 years ago, and I've been quilting ever since.
So I began quilting in 1999 with the birth of my niece. Why I started was I really was thinking about what I could do to bring something into this world that would represent, for me, what was in my heart for this newest member of our family.
Here, I'm known primarily as a quilt collector, but I do pick up a needle and thread every so often. I studied art and photography at Rhode Island School of Design and School of Visual Arts and New York University and International Center of Photography. And when I discovered quilt making, it was another material to work with among the many materials I tried over the years. And it's always interesting being a man in the world of quilt making because it's dominated by women, as you know.
I have been quilting since 1990, long time. My name is Jeffrey. I live in Texas. I'm a college instructor. And I came to quilting back in my first college days. My original undergraduate course of study was theater, and I was going to be a costume designer. In the meantime, I grew up around quilts a little bit. Of course, my grandmother and her generation talked about quilting and sewing, drafting patterns on newspaper because they had to. They were sharecroppers and things like that. My mother didn't quilt. I have the shreds of a quilt from my great-grandmother that we grew up with that all of us slept under and played on top of and everything. It's just worn through. I have a picture of me as a baby I'll show you in a minute on that quilt a long time ago. But I was costuming, and I just started developing an interest in patchwork and quilting, and I left school for a year, and when I came back, the costume designer at the school, and I was her assistant, I became her assistant again, she had picked up quilting. So the two of us went crazy. She had taken classes and things, so she started teaching me and one other student. Every Tuesday we would have a quilt lesson.
Hello everyone, my name is Gene Lumen. I'm a male quilter. I've been hand sewing since the age of 4, machine sewing since the age of 5. I am, in the last 3 years, finally figured out that I'm a fiber artist. So I'm currently filming this from inside my unfinished studio, which explains the holes in the ceiling and probably the slightly funny noise. So my husband and I just recently moved from Anchorage, Alaska to Texas, Leander, Texas, where we're waiting for my studio to be done so that way I can actually create again. Haven't created in 6.5 months. Why did I start quilting, sewing and quilting? Basically because I watched my mother doing it at the age of 4 and I wanted to try it and I wouldn't leave her alone until she showed me. So she showed me how to hand sew, and then I made several things, and then when I was 5, I saw her sewing on the sewing machine and I wanted to do that too. So she showed me how to do that so I'd leave her alone and she could still sew. By the time I was a senior in high school, I no longer got made things by my mother. She would buy me all the parts and pieces, and I got to make it myself because in her words, you sew better than I do, why should I?
My name is Jeffrey Phillips. I started quilting because I read a book about some quilters, set up a quilt camp and my aunt quilts, so that kind of got me started.
Okay, so I'm hoping you can see this little tiny set of pictures hangs over there on the wall in my studio so that my grandmother is always with me. But this is me and my sister, who's now a grandmother, on the quilt that I mentioned that we all grew up under, my great-grandmother made. And there's probably enough to maybe get a couple of placemats out of. There's me being a ham
same camper, color Camry. This is me when I first started learning to hand quilt. That is my grandmother. And if you look in the lower left, that's her sister, my great aunt Maybelle. But we are quilting on an old-timey frame. It's just pieces of 1x clamped together and hanging from the ceiling of her dining room with shoestring.
One of the things that interests me and that I really love and enjoy doing is piecing of quilts and the design of quilts. I write the patterns myself, Romulus Designs.
And how that came about, I was on holiday in Big Bear, California, and I just happened to go into a quilt show, and I was very excited seeing all of the quilts, and I was very inspired. So that weekend I bought a sewing machine and taught myself how to sew. However, that's not the very first time that I sewed. In the early 70s, I used to design and sew clothing for exotic dancers in the city of Detroit, Michigan. But however, I had to teach myself all over again because it had been so many years.
Really, being a male in the quilting world does have its advantages. I do get work, trunk shows, and I do workshops. And being a male and I design my patterns, it really does get a lot of interest, and I seem to do pretty well selling them in person. Also, I enter quilt shows, and I've been continuously with at least one quilt in AQS shows since March of 2018. Last month I had 3 quilts at the AQS Grand Rapids, and this month I have 2 quilts in AQS Fall Paducah.
My name is Dale Allen Rouse, and I'm a quilter. And I'm also a quilt designer and a fabric designer, right? So I'm like in this world, like I'm just all about it. And I wanted to do a little expose on some of the other male quilters, how we got into it, what this means to us. Because I know a lot of us have shared this information with others, especially those who don't know that much about quilting, and they're like, is that knitting? No, it's not knitting. And they're like, so you make blankets? No! I'm like, oh my God. So it's exciting for us to be able to share with other quilters, most of whom are obviously women, but you know, we're here. And I think that it's important for us to share our stories so that especially the ladies can understand what it means to us, right? Why am I so into this world? Why is this my thing, right? What does this do in terms of how does it speak to me, and what is it that I want to bring into the world?
Hi, my name is Glenn Mountain. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, but I moved to Tennessee recently. I'm working on a Lone Star, and it's very hard. There's the other one I did that I have to finish, but I love quilting. It's very relaxing.
About 7 years ago, when I took early retirement, I decided I would try and learn how to use a sewing machine, and went up to do some courses up in London once a week. And that was my first sense of finding that quilting and patchworking in community was great fun. Most of us were starting as novices, and we gradually developed our skills, and that proved to be useful. As you can imagine, I was the only bloke in the class, so having worked in the military and education, largely amongst men, this was quite a novel experience. But then when I started to gain in expertise with it, well, a reasonable level of skill, I wouldn't call it an expert, I then found great pleasure in starting to make things for members of the family and some friends for occasions like birthdays, particular anniversaries, a couple of occasions, weddings, and births. And I've discovered that actually the thinking about it for somebody, and then while you're doing it, thinking about that person while you're doing it, and hopefully some sort of pleasure they get in receiving it at the end of the day, does an awful lot for your soul, and a great deal for the relationships you have with the people concerned and the friendships. It can become a bit of a laugh, something to talk about, and it's just something different. And yes, I am considered a bit of an oddity. I was sewing one particular quilt altogether, hand sewing, on a train journey through Australia, and it certainly sparked lots of conversations because these train journeys were about 11 hours a time. It was very interesting, and also it gives the chance for the family to take the mickey out of me who seem to be a really serious sort, and hence why you see this cartoon up here. So all in all, quilting is good fun and great for the soul, and a good way of giving things to people.